This week on Quadriga, export champions. Germany in the dock. Germany is facing criticism from Brussels about its trade surplus. The EU is worried by the fact that its largest member state exports a lot more than it imports. The Commission wants to determine whether Germany's export surplus is having an adverse effect on the rest of Europe. But at the same time, many economists view Germany's export strength as the bedrock of Europe's prosperity and warn that it would be senseless to weaken its economy. Should Germany be a model for other European countries? Or is Germany profiting at the expense of Europe's weaker nations? Your host this week, Peter Craven.
Hello and a very warm welcome to this latest edition of Quadriga. Now, the question is Germany becoming an export bully? Is it, as its critics appear to suggest, squeezing its Eurozone neighbours and partners quite literally out of the market? We're going to explore that question and many others here in the studio with three very sharp analysts I've got with me today. Let me introduce them to you without any further ado, beginning first of all with Theodore Kouvakas. Theodore, welcome. Theodore looks back on a long career in journalism. In fact, he's been working for Greek magazines and newspapers for 3 decades. He's lived here in Berlin for a number of years, but he will always be able to give us a valuable Southern European perspective to our debate. So, welcome, Theodore. I look forward to speaking. Second up, on my right, Ursula Weidenfeld, who has worked for a whole range of Germany's most prestigious business publications as editor, author and prize-winning commentator. She's currently a very busy and much sought-after freelancer. Ursula, thank you too for joining us today. And last but not least, Andrew Bulkley, who has a long career as a financial journalist. He's currently based here in Berlin as a correspondent for The Deal. That's a New York-based mergers and acquisitions newspaper. Andrew has been a close and canny observer of German-speaking Europe since 2002, so it's great to have him on board. Welcome to all three of you. Now, ladies first, Ursula, the title of our programme today is Germany in the Dock. Tell us a little bit more from your perspective what Germany is actually in the dock for. What is Germany being accused of?
Well, Germany is accused of being quite successful in supporting industrial goods and services. That is something Germany is very good at, and it is something Germany has, something like a USP, a unique selling proposition within Europe. So that is the crucial point Manuel Barroso is angry at and is arguing at. So he wants to...
The EU Commissioner.
He wants to weaken Germany's position in a perspective to improve the position of especially the Southern European countries.
And give me a quick take initially. Do you think that this criticism is justified?
Well, if you look at the balance sheets of the European countries, you will see that the surpluses of Germany in the perspective of Southern Europe and the Eurozone as a whole is shrinking sharply. So I think it is the wrong point he's addressing.
Andrew, I don't get it. When I was a young man, many years ago, I went to university and I majored in political science, but I also did courses in economics. And what I learned from those courses in economics was that manufacturing goods, which you could then sell on international markets, creating growth, creating jobs, was a virtuous activity. And now Germany is being criticised for doing precisely that. Am I naive not to be able to understand that?
Well, no, what you learned was right, and that's right for Germany, but the problem is that Germany is part of this thing called the European Union, which is supposed to be a big family that everybody fails together and everybody succeeds together, and at the moment, the only person succeeding is Germany. And theoretically, what's happening is Germany's huge success is making them sort of a monopoly of creating jobs. They're the only ones creating jobs, and it's only theoretically going to get worse if this manufacturing continues, if their export championship continues. They're going to start sucking the manpower out of the surrounding countries. Everybody that's smart and that has a sellable skill is going to come to Germany, and that's going to deplete those other economies even more. So you're right, yes, what you learned is true for Germany, but the problem is Germany is part of this bigger family, and to a certain extent they're hurting the family at this point.
Give me some insights as to how we could best tackle the problem you have just described.
I'm sort of on your side in that I think that it's hard to criticize Germany for doing well. Either you believe in the free market or you don't. But the problem here is actually one of image. It's one of diplomacy. And that's what Angela Merkel is pretty bad at, really. She needs to say, you guys are right, maybe we need to help you out a little bit, and then not do anything. She just needs to give some lip service to everybody, make everybody feel better that this is going to work out. And, maybe she does need to do something to get domestic demand higher. Maybe Germans do need to be buying a few more Renaults and a fewer VWs. I'm not going to do it, but maybe somebody should. And so maybe there are some things Angela Merkel should take from this, but the one thing she should take from this is that she needs to do some diplomacy. She needs to get out there and get people to like her a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. We're going to have to talk about Angela Merkel, her leadership role in Europe, that's for sure. We're going to have to talk about the whole issue of creating domestic demand in Germany. Let's just bring Theodore in. I'm very interested in the Greek perspective, as it were, on the whole question of the Germans are suddenly, or once again, the bad guys for producing good cars or good machines. Yeah, how does that add up for you?
I think it is absolutely ridiculous trying to blame Germany for being successful, for making great cars, for making great electrical services, appliances, etc., etc. But in order to really understand the situation, I think we have to go back and remember what was happening a few decades ago when Germany was as successful as now. Things were automatically balanced by currency markets. The Deutsche Mark was going up when German exports were strong and down when they were not. Now with a common currency, this cannot happen. Mm-hmm. And the exchange rate of the euro right now, which is ideal for Germany because it's not too expensive and not too cheap, is really very expensive for us, poor guys, in the south of Europe.
Mm-hmm. How angry are people currently in Greece about that? Because you say this criticism is ridiculous, but nevertheless, many people in Greece must look to Germany and they must feel a great deal of anger. That's what we're always being told.
Yes, but anger is not directed against German cars and German products and services. Anger is directed towards Brussels more than towards Berlin. Because when Greece joined the European Union and the Eurozone later on, there was a hope that lots of the problems that existed in Greece would be more or less solved. Corruption and incompetence of public services, and that was not the case. And Greeks were promised bright days and wealth and prosperity, and now you have something like 60% of young men and women out of work.
But when you mentioned that Greece isn't longer able to import a lot of things because of the currency and of its just being not able to devaluate their own currency, what I'm interested in is, do you think that it is right that Greece should import more things at the expense of the other European countries, which help them out in terms of balancing the budget?
Well, Greece has to import some things. I mean, as far as energy is concerned, or Greece has no industry. So most industrial products are imported. Greece has other benefits and goods, and it's got sun, sea, and sand. So there's tourism, and thank God this year it's going to be a lot better than last year, which was a little bit better than the year before, etc., etc.
So there are signs of a comeback, aren't there?
There are signs of a little comeback in some sectors, but the big damage has been done, and it is damage that will stay for decades, because the major damage is the loss of confidence. Okay? Greek citizens do not believe this experiment is going to be successful.
That's not the fault of German manufacturers.
No, of course not. This is the fault of all European countries which led the creation of the Eurozone to apprentice magicians and sorcerers. And now we have this ridiculous situation where we have a common currency without common economic policy, without common tax policy, without fighting tax evasion, and we let things to the free market's self-regulation. We know that self-regulation is a big bubble, never worked anywhere.
Let's just come back to one point that Theodore made just a second ago. You were talking about in the old days when each of the European countries had their own economies, there was a natural adjustment in the system with currency appreciation and depreciation. How important do you think that is, Ursula, that that factor is not there in the system anymore?
I think it's crucial even to Germany's position, because it was not only about devaluation the currency against the Deutsche Mark, it was to devaluate the German surplus, the German deposits they had in different countries, because Germany always, since the middle of the 20th century, has been export champion in some kind. But if you do have different currencies which devaluate, and if you do have different inflation rates which even just shrink everything you have and as deposits at the banks or whatever, you will just have the German surplus has been reduced automatically. Mm-hmm. And this doesn't work in the Eurozone, that's right.
So what to do? Is that, does that mean you want to move away from the euro as the common currency?
It would be one way. It would be one way for Greece.
But is that a realistic avenue to go down?
If Theodore thinks...
It depends on the point of view. Uh-huh. I don't think it's realistic for Greece, because now, let's suppose that Greece left the Eurozone. What would happen would be that Greece would have a devalued currency and an overvalued debt, because the debt is in euros, and you cannot redenominate a debt in this way. And in basic economics, as far as I remember, when you have high debt, then you need high inflation in order to be able to pay it back. If not, you're not going to be paying it back, and this is exactly the problem. That's
the other side of the medal. If you just have devaluation on the one hand, you will have higher inflation on the other.
Yes.
And that's the technique Southern European countries just managed their economic growth and their economic perspectives the last 50 years.
That's the basic way of dealing with debt for everybody, not just Southern European. I mean,
You're right.
To a certain extent, I think Germany's hoping for a certain amount of inflation to get this debt away, and certainly America.
Germans never hope that there will be inflation.
I think,
this is something like a national trauma.
I think let me call up Josef Ackermann and see what he says. Of course, he's Swiss, but
he's not a German.
I know, but I think he's more German than the Germans, I think, in the end. And I think he'll say inflation isn't always bad. And certainly America wants to bank on inflation, but we can't really talk about should Greece go out of the euro, because we've had that discussion already, and it's clear that Greece is going to stay in the euro. And this is the problem, is the euro, and that's why this account surplus. It's a simple math problem. If Germany is sending out way more stuff than it's bringing in, then somewhere that money's going to get stuck somewhere and not be enough somewhere else, and that's the problem.
Okay, we'll talk about that problem in just a second. I would just like to talk about a political aspect of the debate, and I'd really like to ask you this, Andrew. What we've got is that the European Union has threatened a probe of Germany's trade surplus. At the same time, the US Treasury Department, and I've got a quote here, says Germany's economic model is hampering the Eurozone recovery and hurting global growth. We've also got criticism from the International Monetary Fund, all at one and the same time. Is this a coincidence?
No, of course. I mean, everybody saw some criticism somewhere and jumped on it, you know. But, I mean, America criticizing Germany for a trade surplus is a bit rich. I mean, either you believe in the free market or you don't. America has certainly been guilty of its own surpluses in the past. This is really just in sports you'd say
it's politically motivated.
It's just smack talking, you would say, in sports. They're just trying to get an advantage over Germany. Let's beat up on Germany because they're a chief competitor of ours. They actually manufacture stuff where we don't actually manufacture anymore. So America's just trying to get an edge up on Germany. And it has to be said at this point, America's so glad to be able to criticize Germany and to get people to just not say the three letters NSA for a minute.
And I think the second thing is that the point Germany is accused for to just make the neighbor countries in the Eurozone suffering more and longer. That's not true, because the deficits and the surpluses in between the Eurozone, they are adjusting. Germany's exports have been falling sharply to Greece, to Spain, to Portugal in the past 2 years. So that is shrinking.
Demand, not because of the quality of German products.
But that's how economy works. You couldn't demand Germany to just make all the Mercedeses with only 3 wheels because nobody would buy them then. So
yeah, but
that's ridiculous.
That's a dangerous thing, though, because Germany is actually in this family, the EU, and you don't really want to see demand falling off from Portugal. That's actually the bigger point, is that these economies are doing horribly, and they're going to continue to do horribly because Merkel is forcing austerity on these countries.
But they don't continue. If you look at Portugal, you see that there is a comeback. If you look at Ireland, you see that there is a comeback. They are just leaving the program at the end of the year. It's Greece, which is very, very critical, and even there you see that there is a comeback of tourism, which is one of the most important things Greece has to just gain for euros or just foreign currencies. And the second thing, which is shipping services, it will come back in the coming years. So this is something you have to see and you have to take into account if you just go for Germany and say, well, just shrink your balance.
I don't think it has to do with even shrinking your balance. I think the way to solve the export problem is to strengthen domestic demand or demand from Germans for exports, for things from these countries. But the problem is a country like Portugal, a country like Spain, the government cannot invest in its own industry. They're not allowed to spend money. The natural economic factor at this point for recovery would be for the government to spend into that recovery and have that recovery blossom. And Berlin will not let those countries do that. And it's a bit unfair for Merkel to stand there and say, you guys can't spend, look how great it's going. You know, she shows up with her brand new Jill Sanders suit and her brand new Porsche Cayenne, where the guys from Spain have to take the tram to the meeting. It's not fair, and that's what people are mad about.
I don't think it's a matter of Mrs. Merkel or Germany imposing this kind of policy in the European Union. I think the problem is that the European Union is let to be guided by mostly pirates, which are lobbying their way into securing that legislation in the European Union deregulates everything, even water supply or sewage or whatever, because we don't believe in state being an entrepreneur, which is ridiculous, because you cannot have good water services.
The Greek state has been the best entrepreneur you have seen?
No, that's not what I'm talking about. No, I'm not talking
about...
It's
an important question, though.
I think...
Yes, of course. No. The Greek state, as an entrepreneur, is as unsuccessful as the Greek state is in most areas. It's not different.
But why do you trust governments more than entrepreneurs and the free market?
I don't trust governments. On the contrary, what I'm trying to say is that in the last decades, we have a mania for deregulation, meaning no rules, no bounds, no boundaries, no level field. That's what we have created. The European Union right now is a bit tilted.
But that has been stopped by 2011.
It's not a fault of Germany that it is tilted, but it is tilted towards Germany because Germany is strongest, more powerful, and it's got more shoulder power. Okay? That's what I'm saying.
It's interesting that you're saying that the Eurozone system, the European system at the moment, the economic zone here in Europe is tilted in Germany's favour. Because I was looking at all the various countries where Germany has also accrued a trade surplus in recent years. And, you know, you can talk about China, you can talk about the Middle East, you can talk about Latin America, all sorts of different parts of the world where Germany doesn't have this advantage. So there must be something else that Germany is getting right, and perhaps its Eurozone trading partners are getting wrong.
I think it's a European, the common currency. What Germany is getting right is the common currency, because the common currency is cut to its measures, cut to Germany's measures. It's not cut to a level
playing field. What could we change then? What are you proposing that we change?
I don't have a solution in my pocket to pull it out. But
if the common currency were more just adequate to the Greek situation, or the Italian, or the French, or the Portugal, interest rates would be very, very higher than they are today.
Yes.
Inflation would be very, very higher than it is today.
Yes. And if that would not be growing, that would not be going up to the skies.
It would.
It would have to.
It would have to. So I think it's not a solution what you are just the picture you are making up. If you think that higher interest rates, higher inflation would lead to more prosperity in Southern Europe, I think it's not the right way. The low interest rates.
I'm not proposing that.
But you did.
I'm not proposing higher inflation.
But you can't have the one thing without the other.
For the sake of higher inflation, what I'm trying to say is that in the way that the common currency was created, there is no way out of situations like this. There are no security mechanisms. There are no ways of adjusting imbalances. And we see that from the beginning of the euro until now, the gap in rich and poor countries has widened, whilst you remember that the Maastricht Treaty, what was the first article really talking about, it was making the gap smaller and bringing, okay, and the European, the common currency would be just a means towards this goal, which was the basic aim of the European Union. It's gone way out of where it should have gone.
Well, I remember the time Greece was very, very eager to join the common currency, and there was something.
The Greek government was, yes.
All of Greek was.
The Greek government was, yes. No, and I think it was a mistake. I think Greece should not have been, should not have applied, and even more, Greece should not have been admitted.
And there have been.
And that was not only Greece's fault, but it was also Berlin's fault, and it was Brussels' fault.
I don't think that Berlin wrote the numbers on your balance sheets.
Oh, come on.
Okay, let's move away from this dispute. It's a very interesting and I think some very fair points being made there by Theodore about Greece and Greece's perspective on all this. Let's just go back a little bit, because it's the criticism of Germany at the moment is coming in the main from Brussels. And let's just have a look at that Brussels perspective quickly before we then discuss possible answers to that criticism or solutions to the criticism.
While Germany remains under fire for its massive trade surplus, many politicians in Brussels still marvel at the strength of its export sector.
We are not criticizing Germany's external economic competitiveness or its success in global markets. In fact, that is what we want from all EU member states.
The criticism isn't directed at what Germany is doing, but rather at what it isn't doing, namely investing.
We have extremely weak investment at the moment. Last year, private investment declined to levels not seen since 2009. The amount we're saving has become a serious economic problem.
Some experts say Germany should pour its export revenues into infrastructure. Building roads, rail links and schools, they predict, will create jobs and reduce Germany's trade surplus.
Once again, Andrew, this is something that I just don't understand. I'm going back to my days as an economics student or a would-be economics student. We just heard in that report that saving money is a problem. Yeah? How can that be? This is from me. I come from Britain. You come from the US originally. And in the US, what you see people running down to the mall to spend their money. In the UK, you see people running down to the shops to spend their money. Here in Germany, you see people running down to the bank to save their money. Surely that is wise and virtuous, to come back to that word again.
Well, it is wise and virtuous for the individual, and it goes back to what Ursula was talking about, that Germans hate inflation. They're afraid of their money becoming worth a little tiny bit less, but they're also worried of using that money to make it grow into more. And in the UK and in America, we have not only a spending culture, we also have an investment culture where people know a little bit more about money. They're familiar with things like compound interest, and they believe in those things. Germany doesn't believe in that. So when they're saying you need to spend, they're not really saying that you and I need to go out and buy a new TV. They're saying that the German government needs to spend on things like roads, on new power sources. They just need to get out there and get money out, more money into the economy, so that the German people have more money, aren't as afraid of losing that money. They're not going to run down the bank. They're going to go buy the TVs. And then those TVs are going to be made somewhere. They're not going to necessarily be made in Germany. They might be made in Portugal. They might be made in Spain. That's the only way to really balance out this export deficit, is to get Germany importing more stuff. So that's why you want the demand in Germany to climb.
That's very interesting. You mentioned the point there about consumer goods, but consumer investment in consumer goods. Yeah, you mentioned investment by the government in infrastructure, but you also mentioned what I think is a fascinating point about Germany, and I'd just like you to talk a little bit more about this. Is that Germans are very reluctant investors in companies, in the markets. And maybe there needs to be more education by the government to get people who have got, Germans have got a lot of money that they've put away for a rainy day. Maybe they need to be encouraged to invest that
and ultimately, if you know how the German banking system works, that money goes back to the government, because they go down to the savings bank, which is owned by the government, and then they put the money in the government-owned savings bank, and it sits there. And that's because Germans, historically, they have no reason to trust banks. They have no reason to trust the economy. They're afraid something's going to happen, and that money's going to be gone. And so they didn't grow up like you or I did, where you saw people making money in the equity markets. You saw people making money on their homes. Germans don't have that trust, so they just put it away. And the government could do more to get people to buy property. They could get the property out of the hands of big corporations into individual hands. They could show people that, yes, it is actually okay to invest in the stock market. I mean, Deutsche Telekom is the classic supposed failure that
that is the reason why Germans just turned away from the share markets.
But it's also a lie, because Deutsche Telekom pays a wonderful dividend. Everybody ignores the dividend. The telecom, okay, so it hasn't climbed, but I've been getting money the whole time. And people need to know that. People don't understand that in Germany. It's okay. Deutsche Telekom isn't going away.
Well, I think that Germans don't save as much as they used to do before, because interest rates are so low as they are today. They are very there's a massive investment in building, in just buying homes and things like that, not only from Germans, but even but from other Europeans. And the third thing is that I think that the domestic demand in Germany is quite strong at the moment. It is stronger than it has been 10 or 15 years before. And the saving rate, which used to be above 10%, is now below 10%. That's a lot if you put it in an American perspective or a British perspective. But for Germany, this seems to be quite a revolution, that Germans just go in the shopping malls and buy things. So I think there is changing a lot, because interest rates are low, because even Germans who are not very educated in financial things realize that what they have is shrinking if they only put it to the banks. So there is something on the way which is quite new for Germany, I think.
Yeah, it would be nice, and that would be the way to get the export. And I think that's really...
But I think the main problem is not the domestic demand. It is domestic investment, and not only public investment, but private investment. And there is probably something you will see in the upcoming years, 5 or 10 years ahead, that Germany doesn't invest in companies, Germany doesn't invest in innovation, Germany doesn't invest in things it would just make it strong in 10 or 15 years. I think what we do see at the moment is the problem of the upcoming years.
Why? That's a very important question, because the role of the German government in all this is very intriguing. Why isn't there more initiative for investment in innovation and in infrastructure, as Andrew was proposing, bridges and new motorways, new Autobahnen here in Germany? Why the new government, that doesn't seem to be what they're promising. They're promising to keep pulling the debt brake.
Well, I think there has been a lot in the past 20 years in Eastern Germany, and that is probably something which is which is a question for Germany. If you have done something like the reunification and building up completely new infrastructure in a big part of your country, you are tired in doing that. And if you just look at the German budget and at the demographic situation of Germany, Germany is shrinking, it's becoming older, you will have some something of hands-off in just taking big new challenges to solve them, and that is the infrastructure of Western Germany, which is really weak. And it is, of course, the private investment. You can see if you look at German companies, they go for America, they go for Portugal, Ireland again, and they don't invest in Germany because something of just seeing that there is a shrinking market in the next 20, 30 years on the one hand, and on the other hand, big infrastructure problems like energy supply, like all we connect with Energiewende and things like that.
Yeah, but German companies invest a lot more in Asia and South America than they invest in Europe.
Yes,
a lot more.
Asia and Southern America are more competitive than Greece, Portugal and Spain are.
I think it's not only that. I think it is because the markets are there.
Yes, of course.
And the European market is
Southern Europe
saturated, whilst the Asian and Latin American
isn't doing
markets...
enough to become a market again.
I don't think it's a point of doing something to become a market, because that is trying to manipulate reality into becoming what we want it to be.
How can you not manipulate reality? Wouldn't it be fair for Germany's European neighbours, for example, to demand from Germany or to hope from Germany, from the new government, from Angela Merkel in her third term in office, to ask Angela Merkel to put in place a youth employment programme across Europe?
I think there are two ways of manipulating reality. One way is to impose. The other way is to take drugs. I think both are the wrong way to approach a problem. I think if you want to really solve a problem, you have to see where it stems from, where it comes from. Why did we reach this point? And this is not only because the Germans are hard-working or clever or innovative or good in selling and investing, and the Greeks are lazy, and the Italians and the Spanish and they're lazy and they're sitting down drinking the grappa and the ouzo. That's not the problem. But nobody said that. I think that if you look at the short history of the common currency, you see that the first 5 years were in favor of Southern Europe. It has been something... In what sense in favor? Because I don't agree with that.
Domestic demand was strong, growth was strong. It has been
household debt went up 300%. Public debt.
But Germany was the weak man of Europe at that time, because interest rates were too high for the weak German economy. We had lots of problems, which wasn't strong. It was too strong.
Okay.
But Germany went to solve these problems with economic reforms, and there has been a government of Gerhard Schröder which had to go because of these reforms, and there has been something like economic crisis because of the single currency in Germany too. And nowadays. And Germany had to pay for the single currency in the middle of the first decade of the new century. Yes. And Greece and Spain and Portugal, they have to pay now. And I think it's something of the bad side or the dark side of the history of the single currency, that there is not something like a same time development. It is very heterogeneous, and you see that the problems which occur are always at the one hand in Southern Europe, but then Northern Europe is strong, and vice versa.
Yeah, but I think the difference is that when that happened, Southern Europe, everybody let Germany out of the Maastricht Treaty. Everybody was nice to Germany. Everybody said, okay, you're not having such a good time, that's okay, don't worry about it. Now it's
nice
bad.
To Germany. Nobody offered money to Germany.
You didn't
to help them out.
it's a bit of a lie to say Germany was going. It was still going pretty good here. Unemployment was just above 10%. It was you never had the 50% unemployment of people under 30 that you now have in Spain. So it's a bit weird to say, of course it was better then, but the difference was that they were actually, the Maastricht Treaty was a non-issue, nobody cared. Germany was supposed to get fined, they didn't. But whereas now, things aren't going well in Greece, things aren't going well in Spain, and Merkel walks in there and says, look, the government is not going to spend now, you guys are going to stop spending, we'll give you money to get your banks back on track, but that's it. You guys everybody has to suffer. And nobody said that to Germany. And that is really the problem now, is that all this stuff is going so great for Germany, and Germany isn't helping anybody else. And you also talked about it, the big lie in Germany, the thing nobody talks about, the reason Germany's doing so well, yes, Europe is its big single market, but it's really the people who are buying German products, big German machines, are the Chinese. And things are going well in Germany because things are going well in China. And at some point, China is going to figure out how to make precision manufacturing equipment. And that is dangerous. And that's why Germany wants to keep, all these other countries around them need to be Germany's friends so that when China actually becomes competitive, they can compete. Because that's going to be a major problem. When Germany's main customer goes somewhere else, Germany is going to be in a lot of trouble and is going to need friends.
You're completely right.
You said something there very interesting, so I'd like to go back to the point of, what Angela Merkel leadership within the European context, especially given that we're on the cusp, at least it looks that way, of getting a new government here in Germany. You said Germany needs to do more to help its European neighbours and partners. What could Germany be doing?
Well, first would be this creating more demand domestically. The Germans buy more stuff. But there are sort of self-correcting mechanisms even within the euro that theoretically Greece and Spain and Portugal could be low-wage countries. And maybe Germany could say to VW, listen, you've got Skoda, you've got, VW has a number of foreign brands. They could maybe invest more there, maybe move some of your factories. We moved some factories to East Germany when East Germany needed help. Now maybe we can move some factories to Portugal or even to Greece. Maybe we can help Greece get in an industrial sector. Maybe they need to look a little more internationally within the EU. That would be a tough sell to German voters. But, throw an olive branch every now and then. The one thing Germany is really bad at is their image. And maybe it's time to go out and say, listen, we want to be your friend.
I don't think it's only a matter of image, it's a matter of mentality. And the mentality of Mrs. Merkel is exactly, or not exactly, but more or less the mentality of most Germans who are conservative. Not in a bad way, it's conservative in the sense that they don't want things to change, and they don't want things to change much and radically. And that is why I can see many Germans being disappointed by the last 10 years following the Agenda 2010, which restarted the German economy on one hand and doubled the Germans who are at or below the poverty level, creating bigger gaps. And we see that in every year's report about the situation in Germany, that the gap is widening. And exactly what is happening in Germany is happening in Europe also. And if we don't forget our history lessons, we know that as the bigger these gaps become, the bigger the risk of war is. Because in history, every time that after a certain amount of differences, the problems were solved by brute force.
I think you're right when you say that one of the problems of Germans is that they don't like change. But I think they have learned their lesson that you need change to become successful again. And I think you're right. It's not only an image problem, but it is. But what Germans probably have to learn is just to try to be friends with everybody in Europe, and that was what Germany did the past 50 years. They tried to become friends with France, with all of the countries they had as enemies in the Second World War. They were responsible for. But if you look at today's situation, Germany has to try to be friends with everybody. On the other hand, I think there is something the neighbor countries have to admit, and that is that it is no way without Germany. If you don't have the economic hub within Europe, and if you don't have one big country which is successful, and you don't see it in France, you don't see it in Spain, you don't see it in Italy, which could be the other countries to just put Europe out of the mess. If you don't admit that there has to be one country which is able not only to pay for the other countries, but even to lead a way to economic recovery, you won't be successful at all. If you just go for a weakening of, if you go for a weakening of Germany, you go for a weakening of the Eurozone. That is what the Americans at the time do, and would just recommend to in their own favor.
I think that whoever says we have to weaken Germany is a lunatic, frankly. That is not that's not the way to solve the problem.
But that's
You're
what
right,
you are suggesting in detail.
No, not at the least. Not at the least. What I am suggesting is to understand that the European Union, if that's what we are talking about, okay, and the relations between the member countries, every country has its strong points and its weak points. And if we want to level everything out, then we have to understand that it's not going to work, because if you try to take BMW or Opel factories from Germany and move them to Greece or Sicily or Portugal, we have seen this experiment not working, and this is not the solution. I think the solution would lie, if there would be a solution, it would be into changing the European Union or the Eurozone in a way that it is not anymore a ship without a captain, because that's what it is. It's a ship going somewhere. Nobody knows exactly where it's going. Nobody knows who's deciding where to steer. We only know that one is at this point paying.
Who should be the captain when it can't be Germany?
No. It's not
Should
a matter.
it be Greece?
No. It's not a matter of national entities. It's a matter of individuals. Yes, I'm asking for. What I'm saying is that if you don't have a system of governance for an entity, then this entity cannot be governed. And that's exactly what is happening.
Last question, because it's been very interesting, this exchange here across on this side. Yeah, Andrew, who should be the captain of Europe?
I don't have a problem with Germany being the captain. They're being the captain. Also, diplomacy belongs as part of that.
Yeah.
Diplomacy is a part of leadership. It's a part of management, and that's the part that Germany's weak on. You can be the economic power. You just have to be you have to be quiet about it.
But if the ship is sinking, the captain can't say, wait on, let's discuss it.
Okay, we've been discussing the question, Germany is in the dock. Is Germany guilty or innocent? I don't know. We've had a jury of 3 here. I didn't actually get round to popping the question. I hope you at home have had plenty of food for thought from the discussion. I certainly have. I'd like to say thank you very much to Andrew, to Theodore and to Ursula. Great stuff. Join us next week on Quadriga if you've enjoyed this show as much as I have. Bye-bye until then. Tschüss.